Hello, 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 and welcome to the first ever episode of the In the Clutch podcast. My name is Drew Clutchy. I'm here along my co-host Jeremy Wilson. How you doing today, Jer?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's hard to believe. I always get stuck up that we're already at just past the quarter mark of the NBA season. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, it's
from
been quick.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because I've been messed up ever since the bubble. Because you have the
Mm.
Lakers winning the championship in October, and then we started a new season in a rush at December, and we went through free agency and all the draft, all that kind of stuff. And then we're already into the next season. It ends in July, and now we're going right through, and we're trying to get back to the normal NBA timeline. So that puts us now where I try to keep track. The Lakers won the NBA championship just over a year ago.
Yeah, that's crazy. But two seasons.
2 seasons, but like 365 days worth of time. I was
Yeah.
watching ESPN like a month ago and I saw that and I couldn't believe it. I was like, I just can't keep track anymore of where the NBA timeline is. And it's different from the
Uh,
NHL timeline. They did their own bubble during COVID, and it's just hard to keep track of it all. So I understand that you've picked two teams that you're impressed by
hmm.
at the quarter mark of the season so far, and two teams that you're unimpressed by with what you've seen. So why
Yeah.
don't you get us rolling here with we'll hear about what you have.
I mean, you're talking about the Lakers winning a championship just over a year ago, and now I'm not sure what's wrong with them. They're, I think, 11-11 right now, and just absolutely mediocre. I'm not sure. Team with LeBron and Anthony Davis should be better than that. But
Right. Well, fair enough. And then you throw in they have Westbrook too. So I should touch
yeah,
on at the time of this podcast, Jared mentioned the Lakers are 11-11. So at the time of the recording, it is December 5th, 2021. So we're just a little bit past that quarter mark of the season. So do you think it's a main fit issue between Westbrook and Davis and Braun?
yeah. I don't think they have enough shooting, to be honest. You got
Right.
Westbrook running point guard. Like, where's the, especially if you're running Dwight Howard at center, where's your spacing?
Right. Well, and Anthony Davis, I saw a stat yesterday. Anthony Davis is shooting like 19% from three or something this year,
Yeah, I heard, I don't know the exact stat, but he has been statistically the worst jump shooter in the league all year.
which is just ridiculous. And to think he made the top 75 of all time. So you have him in top 75 of all time. And they notably left off. So obviously Klay Thompson's number 76. The Warriors made him a 76 jersey. And he's having a rough time right now. He's been off for 2 years. But the left out of the top 75, they left out Dwight Howard.
Yeah,
Which Dwight
three-time
Howard,
defense player of the year, eight-time All-Star Dwight Howard.
exactly. So he's had a better career than now. Anthony Davis obviously has the potential to have a better career. But
Yeah.
at this exact time, Dwight Howard has had the better career and they won the championship together and they didn't put him in the top 75. AD could or could not be in the top 75. We'll have to see.
Anthony Davis, for reference, is also an eight-time All-Star, four-time All-NBA first team, four-time All-NBA defensive teams. And
But
like
do you
four
think,
All-NBA defensive teams is great, but Dwight Howard won three consecutive defensive player of the years.
right? So if you had to pick one, then who you put in the top 75?
I picked Dwight Howard.
I'd pick Dwight Howard. And that's been among
Yeah.
people I've asked. That's been a common review.
Yeah.
The other thing I think that's been interesting with the Lakers is LeBron just looks done with it. Like there was the whole Isaiah Stewart thing where he punched him in the face. He only got a game. And then now the COVID protocols, he got sent in the COVID protocols on a false positive test. And he had no issues speaking out on how he really felt about that. So it's
Well,
almost like,
I find the false positive test pretty sketchy. You go to Sacramento, you get a false positive, and then apparently they didn't even test him a second time to check. They just immediately sent him into COVID protocols and didn't let him play.
right.
So
But at 11-11, a quarter
yeah,
of the
just
way
to
through the
correct
season,
that, they're actually 12-12.
12-12.
Missed
So
that.
at a
Yeah.
12-12, a quarter of the way through the season, that's not going to like that's not a pivotal game. Like LeBron misses one game to ensure, because you need to remember, right? COVID, as a lot of the players have maintained through, it's more important than basketball.
Right.
Like we don't want LeBron's family getting sick, other people he interacts with, the rest of the Lakers, other teams. So to me, the false positive test, I'd rather have a false positive and have him not play a game or two and then come back than
Hmm.
have the whole Laker squad or another team, everybody get COVID.
Yeah, I think the issue with LeBron was the normal COVID protocols. I think if you test positive, they instantly test you again to
Right.
check. And I feel like he thought in Los Angeles they would test him again, but they were in Sacramento, so they didn't.
Right. Well,
So
the other thing too is I was listening to Brian Windhorst in the Hoop Collective,
yeah,
and what he pointed out, which he also had not realized, and I didn't realize, is because we just passed American Thanksgiving, they're making all of the players test for 4 days, I believe it is, because everybody was out Thursday. This past Thursday, there were no NBA games because that's when they gave the players the time off. And they're because everybody's been away, they're making everybody test for 4 straight days.
right.
So that's also, and that's why you see LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier now are in COVID protocols. LeBron was in and out, and there's
Yeah,
tons of other players around the league. It's because they all had to get tested.
right.
So, and I know Austin Rivers went into the protocols and he was reported as he didn't have any symptoms when he tested positive, and then it just hit him all at once, apparently, and he was down and out. So it's still a really prevalent problem in the league.
Interesting. Yeah. It's
So
still
that,
affecting all stuff.
so then would you still say the Lakers are one of the top teams in the West?
They're not top two, at least. Like I got the Warriors and Suns over anybody else. I guess like currently the 3 seed is Utah and the 4 seed is Memphis. And I don't know where the Lakers stand in the playoff series against those kind of teams, but Warriors are 19-4 without Klay Thompson. Klay comes back, and I feel like with the current iteration of the Lakers, if they play that fully healthy Warriors team, it's Warriors in 5 or 6.
Right. So on one of the two teams that I said I'm impressed by, I obviously have the Warriors. I'm assuming you have them as well.
I did too, yeah.
So the Warriors to me are incredible because so obviously Clay's been gone 2 years. Everybody's been debating back and forth whether, Clay needs to be 80% of himself or whether he should start or come off the bench and all these kinds of things, right? And to me, Klay Thompson, everything happened in his legs. He's still gonna be able to shoot. And then all he has to do is be out there and be a better shooter than Jordan Poole or Damian Lee.
Hey, don't be trash talking Jordan Poole.
No, I'm not. But imagine you put Jordan Poole gets to come in off the bench now and do his own thing.
Yeah.
And Klay Thompson, so you can't just crash 2 people, 3 people on Steph because he's going to kick the Klay. So even if Klay is not the same as he was on defense, he doesn't have as much jump in his step as he did when he was back in his prime. He just has to be a better shooter than other Warriors in the starting 5, and the floor will space out. It'll be better for Andrew Wiggins, better for Draymond.
Yeah, you run the small ball lineup again, put Draymond at center. You could even run Jordan Poole out there still and put Klay at small forward.
And put Wiggins at the 4.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I mean. So everybody's so panicked about what Klay Thompson's going to look like. And to me, the thing that stands out, it doesn't matter. He just has to be able to shoot.
If he can shoot like Klay Thompson and defend decently, he's going to make your team a lot better no matter what. Yeah.
I think everybody's too caught up on, we don't have to have the 2015, 16, 17, 18 Warriors back. It's what the Warriors are now with Klay Thompson. It's not going to be the same. You don't need Klay Thompson to be the same defensive player he was because the team is different now. You have other people that play differently, defend differently, spend more time, less time with the ball. It's just take the current Warriors team and add Klay Thompson and you get a better basketball team.
And the basketball team there without Klay Thompson, I think I'd have coming out of the West right now. So
right, exactly.
Adding Klay Thompson, that's deadly.
Which to me, that brings forth a broader issue too. I hate the way that in NBA circles specifically, because I've noticed we don't do it in the NHL. Like, for those who don't know, I'm also an avid hockey fan. I've spent my whole life playing hockey, and this is something we don't do in the NHL. In the NBA, we look too often to put an asterisk on an achievement or a championship or anything along the lines of that. And you see it with the Raptors championship. Everybody points to, but Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson got injured. So like the Raptors wouldn't really have won. Well, of course the Raptors wouldn't have won. It was the Warriors with Kevin Durant. But what you have to look at is when you look at both of those injuries in back-to-back games, those things happened. Like those were like the Warriors were at the end of a 4 or 5 year run and they were exhausted. They've been to the finals, like, which makes for a really long season, right? Del Curry said the other day that Steph Curry has played an entire additional 82 game season in playoff games, right? That's exhausting. So it was the same when even in the 90s when the Bulls runs came to an end because they were just gassed. So to me, it's like, that's a part of what happened.
Yeah,
right?
and
Because if the Warriors had had more young players, had they maybe like, obviously, like you can't trade away Kevin Durant or Klay Thompson or something, but like had they planned their team differently and not been so focused on winning between 2015 and 2020, then maybe they wouldn't have had those injuries because the players wouldn't have been as tired. Obviously, some of them were coincidental. So to me, those are all events that actually happened. So we don't need to put an asterisk beside it. The Raptors won.
yeah, and I mean, especially how many championships are you gonna find that you can't put an asterisk next to?
Well, exactly. They did. They've already done it. Everybody in the NBA community has already done it to the Bucks.
Yeah, you can go back to last year and say there were heavy injuries in the playoffs last year. That's the only reason the Bucks and Suns were in the finals. You can go back the year before with the Lakers and all the COVID impact that had on the playoffs, and even going back to LeBron coming back 3-1, Draymond was suspended for Game 5, so people put an
Exactly.
asterisk next to that. And
Exactly. So I
Skip
think,
Bayless can find any reason to put an asterisk next to any championship
yeah,
LeBron won. So
that's a whole different topic. But that's so yeah, I find that to be a broader issue across the NBA is we just tend to try to discount things. But to me, that's the way it happened. It's not like we have like the Sacramento Kings won the championship last year because like if 29 teams they all got COVID and they just had to give the trophy to Sacramento. And the one Sacramento Kings fan that exists is like holding his jersey up. He's the only one at the parade. Like that'd be a different concept. But if one team, like obviously like the Lakers last year, they had some injury problems right at the start of the playoffs and then got kicked out by the Suns in the first round. That's something that actually happened and they tried their best and they couldn't make it work given the injuries and the health of the players and the fit and all that kind of stuff. So to me, I don't think we need to put an asterisk beside things. It's just a part of the way the season went.
yeah, you're always gonna have injuries. You're always gonna have, well, currently you're always gonna have COVID problems. Like every team goes
Yeah,
through it. Some teams gotta make it through, right?
which that's been the whole COVID thing has been a remarkably interesting issue
Mhm.
because it can affect anybody across the league at total random. So you look at the Raptors last year, they had an awful start. And then they brought it to 500 at the All-Star break. And then boom, the whole team got COVID and it was over.
Yeah, you had 3 starters, I think, at one point missing all for COVID, and
Which
you're
we didn't have the depth last year to have that happen.
yeah, when you have an 9 man like rotation, and 3 or 4 of them go out to COVID, now you're bringing out guys that should not be getting minutes off the bench, playing Jalen Harris significant minutes off the bench, and
Exactly. Malachi
okay,
Flynn was getting huge minutes. He's not even in the rotation this year.
yeah. Speaking of guys not in the rotation this year, Chris Boucher's been totally cut out.
Yeah,
He just
that's
does
been
not play anymore.
I know you've got some opinions on Chris Boucher if you'd like to share them.
I'm very content with him not being in the rotation. He caught fire from 3 last year briefly, and now he thinks he's a 3-point shooter.
Right.
So I saw him take the ball on like a dribble handoff with 14 seconds on the shot clock and just fire a heavily contested 3. It's like, what do you think you're doing? It's
He
not
thinks
your
he's
shot.
Kevin Durant.
Same height, but he's not quite the shooter.
I'm not a fan of playing small ball and not having a big man. I think the tallest guy on our roster is like 6'9". And to me, that doesn't work. I like having a traditional big that you can put out on the court, especially when you have guys in the league right now like Jokic and Embiid and Giannis. And I
I
think
mean,
you need a big to stop them.
Kem Birch is still 6'9", but I would consider him a more traditional big. To me, he can defend those guys.
Right. But would you not rather have a guy like
JV.
Brooke Lopez? Well, JV can't defend. That's a different problem.
Well,
Brooke
that's true.
Lopez, like, comes to mind. Derek Favors, I know he's a backup, but even just a player like of that general build, that playing style. Because obviously you're
Well,
not going to find a guy like Gobert like with that talent, but just somebody built
I mean, the
differently.
Raptors tried that last year with Aaron Baines, and how'd that turn out?
Yeah, I guess that's true. We can move an asset though to actually acquire somebody rather than like just pick up whoever we can.
Yeah, I don't know who you're gonna move though.
Well, that's the tricky position the Raptors are in. Scotty Barnes looks like a franchise player right now, so
Yeah.
that at least gives us an advantage. Of that gives us a little bit of like a couple of years to try to throw something together. Whether we decide Siakam and Van Vliet, we're going to stick with them and we're going to run it, or whether we decide that we're going to trade those guys away and we're going to pick something new. At least now
Mm.
we know Scotty Barnes is here to stay.
Yeah. And hopefully you can move Dragic at some point for something useful because
Yeah, see, like a player like that, try to move him for just a physical, like a big person, like whether or not it's a super talented big or anything, just to have somebody who we can put in for given possessions to
Mhm.
guard an Embiid, a Jokic, help to be the help defender on Giannis, Anthony Davis.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
agree.
I'm going to transition to one of the teams that I'm unimpressed with.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Portland.
I have Portland too.
That's interesting. I thought I'd be the only one with Portland, but Dame and CJ to me just isn't it. And it's so clear in my mind. You trade either one of them and get a big or like a bigger player, like an Anthony Davis type, like a stretch four.
Mm-hmm.
And you then the other team who probably has two bigs gets a guard. So
Right.
to me, it's like a clear thing. And the Ben Simmons thing, right? They went back and forth. If you could trade CJ and a package of stuff for Ben Simmons, that would be ideal. But I would trade Dame for Ben Simmons and move CJ to point guard and put Ben Simmons at power forward. Which I can see by the look on your face right now for the viewers who or the listeners who can't. JR is absolutely stunned by that statement.
Well, I think if you trade Damian Lillard for Ben Simmons, you make your team worse. So I'm not sure
I
that's
think
what Portland's
you
going
make
for
your
right now.
you make your talent worse, but I think they would have a better team because just based on the defensive side of the ball, you can't defend. Dame and CJ are both small. So to imagine
I
how
agree.
good Portland would be by adding Ben Simmons. CJ can
Yeah.
shoot, so he can help stretch the floor. They have Norm Powell. Norm
Yeah.
Powell is like a mid 40 3-point percentage. He's top 10. I'll double check that, but I think he's top 10 in the league for 3-point percentage.
Yeah, but I don't think you trade one of obviously Damian Lillard's having a little bit of a down season, but I don't think you trade
Well,
one of the best shooter, one of the top 5 shooters in the league for one of the probably bottom 5 shooters in the league.
but then how do you fix Portland? Because we've seen the Portland. So
I'm
forget Damian
McCollum
Lillard
for Simmons. I'm in with McCollum and picks and whatever you got to throw in for McCollum to get Ben Simmons.
Right.
I think you don't move Damian Lillard, especially after he's committed to staying for so long.
Right. So forget about the fact that Dame's having a bad season because we have to assume he'll fix it. He's obviously a phenomenal shooter. So we've seen the Dame and CJ show go to the conference finals, and they're on the longest playoff streak, I think, like active playoff streak in the NBA. I think they're 8 seasons now or 7 seasons. How do you fix Portland if you're not prepared to move Dame? Because I think if you move, obviously you'd love to move CJ for Ben Simmons or CJ and a package of things, but I just don't think you'll see enough interest across the league for CJ to really get anything.
Yeah, that's the thing I have with Portland is they're to me they're stuck. They're good, but not great. They're in a similar position to where the Raptors were before the trade for Kawhi, but you're not going to get a superstar like Kawhi.
Well,
anyway,
interestingly though, so was DeRozan better than CJ?
Yes, I think so.
How much more valuable was DeRozan than CJ? Because we traded DeRozan and got Kawhi, so why can't they trade CJ and a couple other things and get something?
Yeah, I don't know. You got to find a superstar that's available though, and I don't know if you'll find one. Because Kawhi's a special case because he wanted out of San Antonio,
right?
But how many superstars across the league are you seeing that want to move right now?
Ben Simmons, I guess, isn't a superstar.
No, and I think Ben Simmons makes them better, but I don't think he helps them compete with the Warriors.
So just to verify that statistic, Norman Powell is exactly 10th in 3-point percentage. So if you have CJ at the point, I'm not like, obviously if you move Dame, no matter what you move him for, you're not going to, it's the James Harden situation. You're not going to get back something equal value to Dame. Yeah. You can't, nobody's going to make that trade. But I still think you improve your team by having CJ at the 1 and then having Ben Simmons at the 4, who can play phenomenal defense. He can dunk and he can pass. He can dribble. He's a one-man fast break. And then you still have Norman Powell at the 2 or the 3, depending on where you want to put him, to spread the floor.
What do you think it would take Portland to get Jaylen Brown?
I don't think the Celtics would move on it, which they're also, to me, a team that's been surprising this season, because obviously they had the whole internal issues with Marcus Smart coming out to the media and saying that nobody will pass him the ball. But when you pass Marcus Smart the ball, he shoots like a fadeaway three from the logo.
I mean, that works against the Raptors in the playoffs, but other than that.
So I was thinking about that last week. The team that I hate watching the Raptors play the most is the Celtics. Maybe it's just in my head, but I feel like we never beat the Celtics. Like whenever I watch a Raptors Celtics game, we always lose. Versus we'll play the Warriors or something. I'm like, oh yeah, we could beat the Warriors. But we're playing the Celtics, and sure enough, Marcus Smart is 23 points and Tatum is 30, and I'm like, we're gonna lose.
It was ridiculous the last time they played the Celtics in the playoffs. I remember Marcus Smart was like, I don't know, something like a 33% 3-point shooter during the year, and then hit like feels like 7 to 9 threes in a game or something.
Yeah.
It's like, how are you knocking down contested threes when you're not a good 3-point shooter?
No, exactly. But going back to the original point, I don't think the Celtics have enough depth to really make a dent. I think they're in the same situation Portland is, where they're good, not great.
Mm.
And but I don't think they'll move on on Jaylen Brown, because Tatum and Brown are both still so young that you have nothing to like. You have more. It's kind of like the Giannis situation was. You have time to ride it out and hope they get over the hump.
Right. Look at that. Just where teams are at right now. I figure Portland's got like 4 options and people they could trade for.
Okay.
You got Simmons, Siakam, Sabonis, or Miles Turner. I guess I'm counting both those as one. Or like Porzingis from Dallas.
Porzingis is an interesting situation. I just don't believe his body type is built for the current NBA now. If you watch, I don't know how many Mavericks games you watch.
Not very many.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But if you watch the Mavericks play, Porzingis just looks slow. His offensive talent's obviously phenomenal because he's 7'3" and can get a shot off whenever he wants. But they put the ball in Luka's hands, and Porzingis is kind of like, Luka will pass to Porzingis if Luka gets stopped, but he won't like find Porzingis. And then you can give the ball to Porzingis with 8 seconds left on the shot clock, and he can take a floater or a 3 or whatever. And he's a good offensive player, but I just don't think his body type fits the current NBA anymore. He looks too slow, especially when you play a team like the Raptors.
He's like a talented version of Boban.
Right. And a slightly more athletic and quicker, but in the same way, we don't play Boban.
Right.
Like the Mavericks don't play Boban.
Right. He gets limited rotational minutes, but not too much.
So if I was Portland, let's say you're going to move just for the fun of it, you're going to move CJ. I don't think you're going to get enough value back in Porzingis because you're going to be hurt on the defensive end. Right. He doesn't play enough games consistently because he's always banged up in one way or another.
I mean, a team like the I could be wrong about CJ's age. I feel like he's around 30.
Right.
Let me just check that quickly right now. So yeah, he's 30. So a team like the Raptors, whose current timeline is, hey, let's a bunch of 23 and 24-year-olds, or even younger than that, you wouldn't trade for CJ.
Well, and the other thing is, I don't think Siakam makes enough of a dent for Portland to get them over the hump.
Right. So you need a contending team that has a really good player that they could trade for CJ. And I don't know if you could find one that's willing to part with that.
If I'm Portland, and this is the last thing I'll say on the Blazers before we move on. If I'm Portland, I would trade Dame for Ben Simmons and Maxey or a pick, whatever that works out to, or I would trade CJ and, again, a package going the other way for Ben Simmons, because your best case scenario, Ben Simmons basically is a defensive player of the year, whether or not you would vote for him, but he's in the running every year. Incredible passer, incredible dunker, one-man fast break.
Incredible dunker unless Trae Young's in his way.
But yeah, well, to be fair, Trae Young, like 6'1", I wouldn't dunk over Trae Young. But Ben Simmons, if he doesn't even need to shoot the ball. He just needs to play power forward and shoot free throws. So if you can get,
he does have to shoot free throws, so you got to train him to do that.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. So if I'm Portland, the best case scenario Dame and CJ situation, you've already seen it not work.
Yeah.
So if I'm Portland, I would move on, and I acknowledge they're going to be widely criticized across the NBA because you're not going to get a better player than Dame.
You don't move on from Dame. I disagree. You move on from CJ maybe,
but to me, even if they can teach Ben Simmons to shoot a 70% free throw, kind of similar to a Giannis situation, right? Which like Giannis hit that game winner the other day on, it was like a Euro and it was a reverse with his right hand going. He was kind of looking backwards.
Yeah.
And it was a game winner. And it was against Charlotte, actually. And he wasn't afraid to be fouled.
Yeah. Because he's like, I don't know exactly where he's at right now, but I anticipate he's a 77% free throw shooter.
Right. And that's so you just need him. You don't even need Ben Simmons to shoot the ball. You don't need him to be a good free throw shooter. You just need him to be acceptable.
You need him
and
to be,
you can get him to that point, then you're fine.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say about Portland is I don't know if you move CJ or move Dame, but if I was in Portland right now, I'd be moving one of them.
Yeah, I think you have to move on from the Dame CJ situation. I think that's over.
But you think the only way to do so is move CJ?
Yeah, I don't think you move Dame when he's committed to staying and he has been by far the best player in franchise history, and you're not going to get a better player back.
Right. So to speed things up, my other unimpressed team was the 76ers because I feel the same way about them as I do about Portland. So we'll avoid, as we touched on Ben Simmons throughout that entire segment, I feel the same way about the 76ers. They're not going to get a player back for Ben Simmons because now he can't shoot. He spent so much time away from the team. Other teams are going to be worried about his commitment coming into a new team. Just trade him for CJ, essentially, or a player of that value. Just make something happen. Rid yourself of the situation because you're blowing through Embiid's prime.
Yeah, and like Daryl Morey's got to have some reasonable expectations here. I know they have no leverage since Ben Simmons just won't play for them seemingly right now.
Right.
And Daryl Morey at the beginning of the season was just before the beginning of the season asked the Raptors for I think it was Van Fleet and Anunoby and 4 firsts.
Yeah.
It's no, I would barely trade you an Anunoby for him. So
well, and he said that if it takes, I think it was 4 years, Ben Simmons has left on his contract. And Morey was like, if it takes 4 years, it takes 4 years. And if I'm Embiid, I'm like, no, it will not take 4 years. It will take until the trade deadline of this year, and then it must be done.
If it takes 4 years, I'm not here for 4 years. So
because the other thing is they still have they have Seth Curry, they have Tobias Harris, which I'm a huge Tobias Harris fan now. I think he's, in terms of assuming you can't have a superstar at the 4 like Anthony Davis or something. Yeah. I believe that Tobias Harris is the ideal 4 for the modern NBA. He can create his own shot. He can shoot the 3 mid-range. He can get around the rim. Obviously, he's not a stud on defense. I don't think he's below average. So I think he's the ideal 4 now for the modern NBA, assuming you can't have a superstar playing your 4.
He's similar to OG Anunoby if you moved a little bit of OG's defense to offense.
You know? Exactly. Yeah, and OG also, I agree, with OG being a good 4, similar to a Siakam.
Yeah.
Although Tobias Harris has more than just a spin move, so I prefer that even more.
You trust Siakam? You trust Harris to take any kind of shot with the game on the line, where I do not trust Siakam to do that. So.
Exactly, and I'm not just saying that because Harris is on my fantasy basketball team. Okay, so hit me with another team, Jared. What else do you want to talk about?
I had the Bulls in mind, but I think I want to add the Hornets to that. I'm pretty impressed with both of those teams, even though the Hornets are 15-11. Probably the Bulls. I honestly, when the Bulls were making moves in the offseason, I was like, they're making a lot of moves to be a 6 seed.
Right.
Congratulations, your team's mediocre now.
Right.
But at 16-8, and with the combination of Lonzo and Levine and DeRozan and Caruso and Vucevic, and I'm forgetting who their power forward is.
Well, it was Patrick Williams, but he's down and out for the year now.
Yeah, I still like their power forward. I can't remember who it is right now. But they're an exciting team, and they are a good team, which I did not expect. Yeah,
well, part of that's based on the play of DeMar. We all forgot about DeMar because he spent a couple of years on a crappy not even a crappy San Antonio team, because if you have Coach Pop, you're always going to be okay. But just on a not exciting San Antonio team.
Yeah, and it was just, as we do with, I'm sure, lots of players on San Antonio, when San Antonio's not winning championships, nobody watches their games. So
right.
He was a good player on an okay team, and nobody was paying any attention.
Right. So now he's back in, and I know the number one thing we debated about in the offseason was the fit in Chicago.
Right.
Because Levine can shoot, and Lonzo can shoot, and DeRozan cannot shoot. Patrick Williams can't really shoot, which I know he's not in the, but at the start of the season, that was the starting five, right? So it was going to be whether or not there was enough floor spacing. And they've made it work. And they even made it work for a little bit when Vucevic was out.
Right.
And like you said, they're 16-8.
Yeah. And it seems like it doesn't seem like they have a real power forward. It seems like they started last game with Lonzo, Levine, Caruso, DeRozan, and Vucevic. So moved DeRozan over to the 4.
Right.
Also, Caruso, have you seen Caruso play defense? I
It's
didn't
incredible.
know he was a defensive stopper like that.
I didn't know. Yeah, I agree. I didn't know he could defend at that elite level. I thought he was like a good defender for your 6-man. I didn't realize, and especially I watched him put the clamps on Steph Curry on a couple possessions, and I didn't know he could defend at that level.
Yeah, like I don't know. Again, I don't watch all the teams enough to know exactly who's the best defenders in the league, but I feel like he defends at an all NBA defensive level.
Well, I was just watching ESPN the other day, and I can't remember who it was. It might have been Zach Lowe or RJ, and they said that they'd pick Caruso for Defensive Player of the Year. It might have been Kendrick Perkins, but to me,
Kendrick Perkins has some hot takes.
Yeah, that's a hot take, but I wouldn't pick them for Defensive Player of the Year. But maybe they're in the top 5. I'd put Caruso in the top 5.
Yeah, how's Caruso's got to make an all-defensive team? I feel like.
Yeah, and I think he will, especially at one of the guard spots.
Yeah,
you see like Giannis and Gobert and
guards in the league.
Yeah, a lot of the players in Defensive Player of the Year running are like Embiid, Giannis, Gobert because they can get blocks and alter shots in the paint. So I think it's easier to get on the defensive team as a guard.
Yeah, that's the issue for OG. I think OG's easily one of the best defenders in the league, but how are you going to surpass, Giannis and big power forwards who are getting blocks and are considered forwards?
Well, and the difference with OG, I find though, is I don't always feel like it impacts winning.
I disagree. He consistently guards the best player on the other team. And I remember watching, again, that playoff series they played against the Celtics where he would guard whoever was, like he was on Tatum because Tatum was their best player. But then when Kemba started feeling it, they just switched OG onto Kemba. Like he's just good enough a defender. Anybody 1 through 5 that's going, put OG on him.
Right, which is a huge advantage.
Yeah, and he can actually defend guard center. So
as Mikal Bridges in Phoenix.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Bridges.
Both Warriors and Suns split the. It was 2 consecutive games for the Warriors. There was one thrown in between for the Suns, and they split them. Is that an indicator to you as to is one team more powerful than the other? Or do you think for you is it just 2 regular season games?
I mean, it's tough to tell. The Suns won I was pretty impressed with the Suns winning the first one, especially since Booker went out in the second quarter, I think.
Right.
Like Booker only played 15 minutes during that game, and Booker didn't play at all during the second game.
Right.
But again, they're missing Clay. So to me, the first game I think had a more intense feel to it. I couldn't watch the actual game, but I watched the highlights of it at the end, and good defense, good shot making, and I don't know. I feel like if those 2 teams play a series in the playoffs, it's going to go 7 games, and I'd probably pick the Warriors for the sheer, Steph Curry factor. But
and on that first night, Steph Curry had an awful shooting night.
That was
like the worst in his career shooting night.
Statistically, the worst game he had with 20 plus shots in his career.
Which last night, so I watched,
and that was a lot. Sorry, that was a lot to do with Mikal Bridges, like you were talking about his defense, right? So.
Well, absolutely. And I watch a lot of Warriors basketball, both because it's so entertaining to watch. They just move the ball so quickly, and also I got Steph Curry on my fantasy basketball team, so we kind of ride or die with that. That's kind of for how my team's gonna go. But last night, Curry is like 1 of 14,
right?
I think, but he still had 10 points because he'd been fouled so many times. And then he went like 4 of 5 to end the third quarter, and then went to the fourth quarter, and they still ended up losing because at one point they were playing the Spurs. They were down like 22 points or something. But the teams just throw everything they have at Steph Curry.
Mhm.
So if he can be now, he'll get to kick out to Klay Thompson. You'll
Yeah.
have to stop throwing every single thing. Cause there were multiple possessions last night where they're triple teaming Curry,
Yeah.
like not even double teaming. They've got 3 guys on him because if Damian Lee, Jordan Poole, like if they have an off shooting night, then you're going to beat the Warriors.
Yeah.
And even last night, it was close. It's so exciting to watch. What they do is they'll put Draymond holding the ball. And what they did last night, for example, was they had Toscano Anderson and Curry standing side by side on the wing.
Hmm.
And Toscano Anderson made it look like he was going to set a pick for Curry. And then Curry came up and around. And Toscano Anderson just went right to the basket. And both defenders went with Curry. And it was just like Draymond just like lobbed the ball in there. Boom, dunk.
Yeah,
And
just so much gravity for Curry that people are just gonna follow him. Leaves everybody else open, right?
Like when Giannis, for example, like they'll put 2 guys on Giannis when he has the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But because Curry is so dangerous just from everywhere, they put 2 guys on him when he doesn't have the ball. So like the Warriors get so many like open dunks and stuff like that just from, both defenders go over the screen with Curry or under, they run back screens and all that kind of stuff. They go baseline and both defenders go and they just get wide open situations. And part of that's Draymond's so good, such an excellent passer.
Yeah. And I'm not sure, just to comment on how insane Steph Curry is. I don't know if you saw this leaderboard. It was games with 9 or more threes made all time.
Right.
Number 1 was Steph Curry. Number 2 was Steph Curry in November.
Yeah.
And number 3 was Damian Lillard and James Harden.
Right.
And that's 27 points off only threes 10 different times in November.
And he's the best free throw shooter of all times. That like right there puts him over 30.
It's ridiculous. There's nobody in the league right now I would take over Steph Curry.
So I've maintained that statement, which I thought for a little bit it was a hot take, but now it's just an acceptable statement. I got him number 1. Not that, you know what, I talked to the NBA and I don't get to submit an MVP ballot, but if I did, I would have Steph Curry at number 1.
That's the MVP ballot's interesting. I feel like it's got to go right now, at least Steph Curry and then Kevin Durant probably. But then who's next? Giannis?
Oh, I would put Giannis. For me, Giannis is at the 2.
But Giannis is the 3 or 4 seed right now, and Kevin Durant's the 1 seed.
Yeah, but the Bucks have had tons of health issues. Middleton was out for a while. Drew Holiday went down in the first game of the season. And to me, I think Giannis, people focus too much on what they call voter fatigue, which is like Giannis has already won Defensive Player of the Year, he's won MVP, Finals MVP. But from my situation, and when the Bucks won the championship, I said that Giannis, at this exact moment, is the best player in the world. Now, that to me is a very fluid measurement. It changes all the time. But at that exact moment, Giannis had just won the NBA Finals. He dropped 50, and he hit like 17 of 19 free throws, played excellent defense. So for me, you can't take into account like voter fatigue or he didn't improve like every year in MVP voting and Defensive Player of the Year voting, because it's what more do you want him to do? He can't do anything else. He already has 30 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, or 6 assists, maybe 4 blocks, 2 steals. There's nothing more he can add to improve.
Right.
Assuming he shoots his free throws well.
Yeah, I agree. And again, just another comment on how insane Giannis is. The Raptors played the Bucks, I don't know, 3-4 days ago or something. And won. And I hadn't been able to watch the game, so I went to just look at the box score and I saw that Giannis didn't lead his team in points, assists, or rebounds. I was like, oh, so Giannis didn't play.
Right.
Because it's not like he would have a down game and not lead his team in any of those categories. He will lead his team in something.
Exactly. He's just so dominant.
Yeah, Giannis must not have played, and he didn't, and that's probably the only reason the Raptors won that game.
Right. So to me, that's why Curry is number 1 on my MVP ballot, is because just everything he does, even with his mere presence on the floor, changes the game and how teams defend the Warriors as a whole, let alone the fact that he can be triple teamed the whole game and still score 32 points. But I'd put, to me, Giannis is the clear second.
Yeah. It's tough to tell, but I mean, Giannis is averaging 1 point per game less than Kevin Durant.
Right.
Is sixth in the league in rebounding,
At how
and
many?
he's at 11.8 per
Right. So more
game,
than a double double.
more than a double double. Kevin Durant is averaging 7.7 rebounds, and then when you go into assists, Giannis is averaging 6, and I'm not sure where Durant is on this list, but I'm
Yeah.
finding that.
To me, I just don't think it's a close thing.
I feel
It's
like,
not a. Go ahead.
but if you're gonna put the ball in somebody's hands with a game on the line, I'm probably gonna give it to Kevin Durant still because it's just
Oh,
sheer scoring
absolutely.
ability.
But I
So
don't
like,
think that puts him ahead in the MVP voting.
no, that the only thing I would have that puts him ahead in that B3 voting is he's the 1 seed as of right now.
Right. Which that's
So
that's fair. Your team needs to do well.
yeah,
So I'll give you one more team. So I'll give you one thing that I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out for the rest of the season.
okay,
And then I'll get you to do the same to kind of wrap things up here. So
okay,
one thing that I'm looking forward to seeing is I want to see how the Cavs play out. Because the
yeah,
Cavs have been running Sexton and Garland and then Lowry Markkinen at the 3. And then they run Mobley and Jared Allen, which
yeah,
Mobley is in the conversation for rookie of the year. I wouldn't pick him over Scotty Barnes yet, but that's a whole different debate. But they've got 3 bigs, and Mobley and Jared Allen together are just a defensive force in the paint. They're terrifying. So now they're 13-10 at the time of recording, but Sexton's out for the season.
right,
But Ricky Rubio is playing great basketball this year. So
yeah,
obviously you'd rather have Rubio coming off the bench to fill those minutes. Like you'd rather have him coming off the bench just to give your team depth. But having to put him in the starting lineup, it's not the end of the world. Garland, since Sexton's gone out, has played well. So I'm interested to see, because obviously behind the Cavs right now, the teams immediately behind them are the Celtics, the Hornets, the Sixers, the Hawks, and the Knicks. So like on paper, I would pick any of those teams over the Cavs. So the Cavs are the 6th seed, so they're above the play-in. So on
yeah,
paper, I'm picking the field to overtake the Cavs. But I'm interested to see if we'll see now like more teams reverting to what the Cavs are doing, because you have the Raptors on the opposite end who are playing small ball. But in like the early 2000s, 2010s, it wouldn't be unreasonable to see a guy more like Lowry Markkinen kind of shifting towards the 3,
yeah,
right? Putting him at small forward. But now that we've seen what the Warriors have done, it's kind of changed the scope of the game. So I'm interested to see if they can really keep the pedal down, or whether or not they'll keep playing the 3 bigs just because it's what they have on their roster.
yeah. I love the idea of the Cavs more so because again, everybody in the league, like how the Warriors changed the league, everybody in the league is playing small ball. You can have one center maximum sometimes.
Right.
And the Cavs are like, let's run 3.
Right.
So I know Sexton's out for the season, but just put Taco Fall in at center, shift Lowry up to shooting guard, and
That's a
run
hot
Mobley.
take. That's what they should do.
Uh, yeah, it's I love the idea of them just going totally opposite from the entire league and going, yeah, let's just play 3 centers. Like,
And
forget it.
it's so far it's working. They're better than half the teams in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I agree.
All right. So one thing you're looking forward to for the rest of the season, or one thing that you'll be closely watching?
I'm not even sure if this counts as the rest of the season. I want to see the Bulls and the Wizards in the playoffs.
You want them both to make the playoffs?
I want to see what they do in the playoffs. The Bulls will make the playoffs. I'm pretty sold on that. I don't think there's any chance the Wizards are going to miss the play-in, at least.
Really though? Think about it. Can you
They
think the Knicks?
could,
Do you think
but
the Knicks can beat the Wizards?
no. I don't
Okay,
like
so
the
then
Knicks
you're
that
right.
much.
Then assuming the Raptors won't figure it out, then you're right.
So I think both those teams will make the playoffs.
Right.
And I don't know, like currently the Bulls play Boston in the first round of the playoffs.
Right.
That's how things will work out today. And I don't know if the Bulls can beat Boston. I don't know how they would do in a playoff series against a good team like that.
Right.
Now the Wizards would play Miami, and I think Miami would kill them. But
Right. Well, especially a fully healthy Miami.
yeah,
Miami's
Miami.
built for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think nobody. I don't know if Miami will win a championship or anything like that, but I don't think anybody wants to play Miami in the playoffs.
Right. Which I agree. That's just the situation it'll be. Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. I think, too, the Wizards didn't get enough credit last year when they had Westbrook and Bradley Beal, because the Raptors, until the All-Star break, or right after the All-Star break, I guess, were close to the play-in tournament.
Right.
But when you look at it, superstars win games and win championships in the NBA.
Yeah.
And Bradley Beal was having an incredible season last year. And as the season went on, Russell Westbrook figured it out and got back to his triple-double self. So I don't think the Wizards are given enough credit because they have Bradley Beal.
True.
So like they have a superstar, and a lot of the teams chasing them have all-stars.
Right. Like Bradley Beal would be the best player on Cleveland, would arguably or probably be the best player in Miami. He'd be close on Boston. He'd be the best player on Charlotte. So
Exactly.
yeah, I don't know if he makes quite the tier of superstar to me, but he's the best player on a lot of teams.
Which I agree. So to me, the Wizards are I don't think they'll maintain the 4 seed. I think I think we'll find the Wizards in the play-in tournament. The Bulls, I honestly don't know. They're right behind the Nets, but I think the Bucks will obviously overtake them. So I think you'll see the Wizards in the play-in. I'm not sure if you'll see them in the playoffs, because to me, what happens, especially because the play-in, depending on where you're ranked, is just 1 or 2 games. It could be anybody. Embiid drops 30, 20, and 5 blocks. Sixers are in the playoffs. If he does that in the play-in. Same thing if Tatum drops a 40 piece, Celtics are in the playoffs.
And Philly's got, I bet you the Nets have no interest in playing Philly in the first round, because who's guarding Embiid on the Nets?
Kevin Durant, maybe. Like I don't know. I guess
Kevin Durant's got to be half the weight of Joel Embiid.
Yeah, like I don't even know what you do. Like they're gonna panic about it, right? So that's what I mean. So it'll be interesting just to see. I'm assuming Kyrie Irving's not coming back. So I wouldn't want to be in the play-in at all in the East.
No, I'm not sure I would.
It's just the play-in. I love the play-in system because
I do too.
It motivates teams not to tank. But I think as a team, you'd want to avoid the play-in at all costs because it's just too much. There's just too much risk of somebody has a hot night and then you're out, and then you play a different team. So like, let's say you're the 7 seed, right?
Yeah.
So you're playing the Celtics and Tatum drops 40. Okay, that's the way it is. And you go down and play the Hawks in the next game of the play-in tournament, and Trae Young has a 40 piece. Well, that's it. You're done.
Right.
It's over. Trae Young is 40 points and 10 assists. Great. Now you're out of the playoffs.
I also am very interested in the Timberwolves. I think the Timberwolves could be a really good team. And currently they'd be in the play-in, and just interested.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of a run they go on, or if they could put together a win streak.
Yeah.
So to close this out here, because we must be getting towards an hour, this is what I'm going to call the tweet of the week. I know it was last week, but we didn't get the chance to record last week. But this tweet was so good. I just feel that it really deserves to be read. So this tweet comes from the great Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I'll read it word for word here. Quote, "You won't believe me, but a kid just told me to try dunking my Oreos in milk. Man, game changer. Hashtag mad my girl didn't tell me sooner. Hashtag new bedtime snack." So I feel like it's fair that I coined that our tweet of the week, even though it came out last week.
I have one extra tweet I want to throw in. That can be tweet of the week. I just want to throw this at the end here.
Absolutely.
It was during the Thunder game this week. Nick Wright tweeted, "At this very moment, Darius Baisley has a plus minus of -32, and it's the best of Oklahoma City Thunder starters."
Yeah, they got killed. The Memphis list, John Morant, or the John Morant list, Memphis Grizzlies, and it was just the biggest win in NBA history. I couldn't believe it. I thought I was reading it wrong.
That's incredible. But anyway, just wanted to throw that at the end.
Yeah, no, I still think I have tweet of the week, but we'll leave it up for interpretation. All right, well, that's all we've got for the In the Clutch podcast this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.